The valley was quiet beneath the twin moons and the human named. Rian moved carefully down the slope as his survey scanner pulsed in steady rhythm. The mission log said the ridge once held an outpost of the old empire, but centuries of sandstorms had buried nearly everything. Rian had expected abandoned metal, cracked pylons, maybe a dry vent from some forgotten reactor. He had not expected company. The cave at the ridge wall had looked shallow at first glance. Only when his boots crossed the threshold did he notice the faint shimmer deeper inside. Light reflected off something smooth. He took a slow step forward. The air shifted. Someone was inside. A voice rose from the darkness. It was strained yet steady enough to make his pulse tighten. The words came in accented standard yet clear. The voice said not to look. Rian stopped, but his eyes still scanned the shadows until they caught the outline of a tall figure pressed against the wall. The figure stepped forward into the faint blue glow of the scanner. It was a woman of a tall alien lineage he recognized from briefing files. She belonged to one of the Starborn dynasties that once ruled the Outer Rings before war shattered their courts. The crown markings on her forehead were faint and broken. Her silver skin carried long scars like lightning, frozen in metal. Her shoulders were wrapped in a rough travel cloak, and her hands trembled as if caught between fear and pride. She pulled the cloak tighter and said again not to look at her. Her voice cracked on the last word. Rian did not turn away. Instead, he moved nearer and kept his posture relaxed. He said he would not harm her and sat on a flat stone, so his height no longer towered over her. She watched him with disbelief, as if she had expected him to flee or mock or demand answers. He asked who she was. She hesitated, then revealed her name was Lyra. The title came slower. She admitted she was the last princess of a shattered house. Rian had read of her people, but never expected to meet royalty in a barren cave. She noticed his surprise and looked away as if ashamed of what she had become. Lyra told him she had been hiding for months. Raiders hunted her kind. The marks on her skin were burns from a reactor explosion when her vessel was shot down. She had survived, but at great cost. Her court had believed appearances symbolized divine favor. Any mark was shame. The scars on her face were enough to exile her, even if she returned home. She said this with a quiet sorrow, and added that humans were rumored to be fierce but kind. She doubted the second part, yet here he sat without fear. Rian knew many stories humans told about themselves. Humans fought to claim barren worlds, bargained with hostile species, endured environments that made others retreat. Yet the trait he believed shaped his people with stubborn compassion. They refused to leave others behind. He told her this, and she listened with furrowed brows. When Rian asked if she had food and water, she nodded toward the cave depths. She had scavenged wild roots and drawn water from a slow drip in the rock. Enough to survive, but not enough to grow strong. He offered a nutrient bar from his pack. She refused at first, then accepted after he took a small bite to show it was safe. The cave air felt heavy as the night pressed deeper. Rian noted that Lyra's breathing grew unsteady. She had been alone for too long. The silence of survival had given her mind too much room for fear. He asked if she wanted light. She startled and said no. Light revealed the scars. Light made her feel judged. Rian softened his tone and said light would help him repair the cave entrance. A sandstorm approached, and he did not want debris to seal them inside. She sighed and allowed it. He activated a lantern. Its steady beam pushed back the dark, but Lyra flinched as if struck. Rian looked gently in her direction. Her scars were deep, but beautiful in a way he could not explain. They told a story, not of weakness, but survival. She did not meet his gaze. She kept whispering that she was ruined. He said nothing for a long moment. He wanted her to speak at her own pace, She finally asked why he sat near her when she had asked him not to look. Rian answered that distance made fear stronger. If she pushed everyone away, she would never know who would choose to stand with her. His words were plain but honest. She studied him as if trying to see if there was mockery behind them. There was none. A rumble echoed from outside the cave. The sandstorm had reached the ridge. Rian stood and moved to the entrance. Lyra followed, despite the wind pushing her cloak back. The storm would trap them for hours. He secured a barrier panel from his kit and locked it against the opening. The wind roared, but the panel held. When the storm settled into a steady howl, Rian returned to the center of the cave. Lyra watched him carefully. She asked why a human explored such remote regions alone. Rian explained he served as a survey specialist for frontier mapping. He loved quiet worlds and empty valleys, and the sense of discovery that came with each new place. He said he had expected only stone here. Finding her had changed everything. Her posture shifted at his words. For the first time, her eyes softened. She asked why humans helped strangers. Rian said, because one day it might be them in need. She whispered that her people believed strength meant isolation. He answered that strength meant standing together. She looked at her scarred hands for a long moment and said perhaps her people had been wrong. The hours passed with slow conversation. Rian described Earth's oceans and storms and forests. Lyra listened with wonder. She said she had studied maps of human worlds, but never met one of them face to face without political tension. Humans had fought beside her people once, then against them, then beside them again. Rian laughed lightly at the confusion of galactic politics. Lyra asked why he laughed when war had cost so much. He replied that humor was rarely about the situation, but about surviving it. She tilted her head at that. She said she wished she could laugh again. She had forgotten how during the long months in hiding. She asked if humans feared scars. He said scars meant a person had lived and chosen to continue. She looked away, but he saw her lips tremble with the weight of that truth. The storm finally weakened. Rian lowered the barrier slightly to check the sky. The air beyond was tinted gold by drifting dust. He told her once the path cleared, he would take her to his ship. She resisted at first. Fear clung to her like dust in the wind. She said she was not fit to stand among others. Rian stepped closer. He said she deserved safety, regardless of what she believed about her appearance. Lyra's breath caught. She asked how he could look at her without disgust. Rian answered that he saw a survivor. She whispered that the scars marked her as cursed among her people. He said cultures created rules, but individuals could choose which to follow. She stared at him as if seeing a new path open. He suggested they step outside once the wind calmed enough. Fresh air might steady her thoughts. She agreed slowly. Minutes later, the storm broke and the valley became still. The sky cleared until the moons shone again. Rian guided Lyra out of the cave. She stepped into the light with a hesitation that shook her entire frame. He stood beside her in silence, so she would not feel exposed. The valley stretched before them, long shadows cutting across rock. Lyra looked at the moons and whispered that she had dreamed of flying among starfields again. Her voice wavered at the thought. Rian told her she would fly again. She doubted him. He repeated the promise without ornament. She turned to him with questioning eyes. No one had ever spoken to her without expecting favor or allegiance. Rian's sincerity disarmed her. She asked why he cared so much. He said caring was a choice he made freely. She absorbed the words as if they were a language she had forgotten. They began the walk to his small shuttle. Lyra paused whenever the wind brushed her cloak aside. Rian did not look away. Each time she flinched, he repeated calmly that she was safe. Over time, her steps grew steadier. When they reached the shuttle, she stopped before the ramp. Her entire universe had shrunk to a cave for months. Leaving it meant facing a future she did not understand. Rian placed a hand near her arm without touching. He said she could take as long as she needed. She drew a long breath and stepped aboard. Inside the shuttle's cabin, Lyra looked around with curiosity. Human design was simpler than the grand vessels her house once commanded. She traced a finger along a smooth metal panel. Rian prepared the launch sequence. She settled into the co-pilot chair with cautious grace. As the shuttle rose above the valley, she watched the cave grow smaller. She whispered that she felt like a ghost leaving her grave. Rian said ghosts moved backward, but she was moving forward. She held his words carefully. The stars emerged as the shuttle entered the thin upper sky. Lyra leaned forward with wide eyes. She had expected fear, but instead felt a strange warmth. Rian guided the ship toward his larger cruiser waiting in orbit. She asked what would happen once they arrived. He said he would report her rescue to Alliance channels, then take her to a medical station that could help her recover. Her posture stiffened. She said she could not face physicians who might judge her. Rian assured her they would not. He would stay with her through every step. She turned toward him. Her voice was soft and uncertain. She asked why he believed in her when she struggled to believe in herself. He considered this. He answered that belief was the first gift one person could offer another. She lowered her gaze and whispered she had never received such a gift. They reached the cruiser. Rian guided the shuttle inside and powered down. Lyra hesitated before.